In this video, I'm going to take a look at 8BitDo's mod kit for the original N64 controller. After the introductions, we're going to unbox it together, we're going to install it, we're going to set it up, playtest it through, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to pass on my thoughts. Hello there, the Internet, Tough Monkey here once again. Hope that you're all well. Thank you very much for stopping by. And you know, I've not done an unboxing or a review video for quite some time, mainly because the British government keep telling me not to buy anything to keep track on inflation. Well, screw you, Rishi Sunak, because I bought something and this is a review to show it. Now, as you can see up there, I've had 40 odd years worth of gaming experience of collecting consoles and the controllers that go with them. In fact, that there is my original controller, a Cheetah Kempston joystick for that Sinclair ZX Spectrum, and as if to prove that point, there it is, sat on the windowsill with me gurning at the camera from 40 years ago. So I've got quite a lot of experience of controllers. I've got my own particular favourites, such as the first generation Sega Saturn controller, first generation, not the second generation, and just to point out, that is not my exhaustive list of controllers. I've got boxes of them all over the place, and there's a big box of them there. There's more up in the loft. But if I'm playing on my PS5, then I'm playing with a DualSense. If I'm playing on the Switch, then I've got the Joy-Cons or a Switch controller. If I'm playing any kind of Sega game, whether it be on my PC or on my Mega Drive or my Sega Saturn, then I will use a 3-button joypad. I used to use a Switchbox converter for my original Saturn joypad, but I generally use one of these, an 8BitDo. It's a Mega Drive controller, but it works on the Saturn as well. And they are really, really good. I do enjoy using those. So if I'm using a 3-button or a 6-button, I use a Sega replica joypad. If I'm using a 4-button game, either PS4, PS5, or on my console, on my computer here, I will use generally a DualShock 4. I think they're really, they're nice. I mean, I've got Xbox. I mean, the Xbox controllers. I always used to like the 360 controller. It's quite nice, but I prefer the DualShock 4. But there is a particular manufacturer of consoles, and you may see it here, who are absolutely bat-crap crazy when it comes to designing their controllers. You've got the SNES up there, which were pretty standard fare back in the day, and then they went completely nuts with the N64. I mean, what the heck's going on there? And then continued the trend with the GameCube and the Wii controller and the Wii U and the Switch. They've always gone their own way, haven't they, Nintendo? And I remember when I first used it. This is my original N64, and we used to play this a lot back in my uni days in the late 90s. GoldenEye, 4 players on this thing. One of the greatest gaming experiences of your life. It's just wonderful, and I do still play my my N64 through various converters on my OLED TV. It looks horrific, but I do still play it, and I have got 4 joypads for it. I've got this. The green one is the one I always use. I've got a black one here. I've got a yellow one here, and I've got the original grey one up there. Now, N64 controllers were notorious for their joysticks just becoming very loose and unresponsive over time. I mean, that is a pretty poor one. The green one and the black one, though, I have replaced those. You can buy these off of eBay or whatever. You can replace the joystick, and that's a far more rigid one, which is why I use that one. It's a pretty good one. But what about if you could renovate one of these joypads to make it compatible with Bluetooth devices, say your Switch or your laptop to play random games on? Could you do it? Yes, you can. Nintendo themselves make it's a remade version of the N64 controller. It's on their website at the moment for $39.99, but it's never ever in stock. And in fact, if you go on eBay at the moment, you'll see them on being sold for between £40 and £70. They tend to sell for around about £50, looking at the historical sales. So they can be quite expensive. So if you have an N64 controller knocking about, and especially one that's perhaps not in its best of life, is there anything you could do with them? Yes, there is. The 8BitDo I always call it 8BitDo. It's 8BitDo, isn't it? The 8BitDo N64 mod kit. Now, while 8BitDo do sell a lot of their products on UK retail sites, and that includes Amazon, which is where I got the M30 from, they don't sell all of their products, and that includes the N64 mod kit. To buy that, you're going to need to go to the 8bitdo.com US website to buy it. At the moment, it currently is retailing at $39.99 US, which works out roughly just under 32 UK pounds. And that's for the entire mod kit, which includes the mod kit which goes inside the joypad, the rumble pack replacement, and that is an original rumble pack that goes in there, but you get a replacement for that, which I think includes the Bluetooth transmitter. I think I might be wrong about that, and it also includes a replacement Hall effect joystick. Now, you can buy these things separately. You can buy the mod kit and rumble pack for $29.99 US, so excluding the joystick. And I would only recommend doing that if you've got a joystick which you know is good. I mean, that's quite a recent joystick, so I know that's good. So if I was going to use this joypad, I wouldn't perhaps buy the Hall effect joystick. But because I'm using this one, which is pretty poor, I want to replace the joystick, so I've gone for the full kit. If you were to buy the mod kit and rumble pack separately, which is $29.99 US, like I say, and then you ultimately found that your joystick isn't very good, you can buy the Hall effect joystick on its own. It's $19.99, so you'd effectively be paying $10 extra, around about £8 extra if you bought them all separately. So I think that is a pretty decent value purchase, that is. Now then, what else? Oh yes, now this is quite an in-demand product, and at the moment it's got a pre-order function, and it was the same when I ordered mine. I ordered mine, it must be about 6 weeks ago, maybe. It told me when the pre-orders were due to ship, and it was at least a week, maybe 2 weeks after that, before I got notification that it had been shipped. And it still took another 10 days from that notification of saying it had been shipped to it actually arriving on my doorstep. So as of today, which is the last day of August, the 31st of August 2023, it's currently saying that it will ship on September 20th, 2023. So by the time you've added on the actual delivery time, it's going to be about a month, I would have thought, from when you place your order. Now, although it's in a US web page that you're ordering it from, it will come from China. I've got the invoice, whatever. It comes from a location in China, not the US, and I've got absolutely no problem with that. Let's face it, half the stuff on Amazon comes from there anyway. But you'll pay in US dollars, and it'll convert to UK pounds when you buy it. But that $39.99 US, £32 UK pounds. That includes all shipping. There's no extra costs, and I got charged nothing extra, no additional tax to get it brought into the country. So the $39.99 US, £32 is what you pay for your modification kit. So let's have a look at what we've got in there. Now it actually tells me what's in there. It tells me that there's in the box is the 8BitDo mod kit, the printed circuit board, I assume, the rumble pack, a Hall effect joystick, one screwdriver, and the set of instructions. So let's go ahead and get into this for the first time and see what's in. Well, we're going this way. Here we go. Right, okie dokie. We've got the instructions. So it tells us what's in the box, and this is for Switch and for Windows. Now that's one thing to notice actually. Although I'd like to use it with my Switch, I'm more than likely going to end up using it mostly for PC games, because it's just something a little bit different. Like I say, the Nintendo's completely different. I've got my Sony joypads, I've got my Sega joypads. I wanted a Nintendo joypad for my PC. And usually 8BitDo's joysticks and joypads are compatible with Switch, with Android, and with PC. There's usually some kind of combination of buttons you need to press to get it to speak to one or another. But after actually ordering it, I double checked and I noticed, hang on, it doesn't actually say anything about Windows or Android. And if you actually look on their webpage, when it says what the compatibility is, it just says Nintendo Switch and Android. Doesn't say PC, doesn't say Windows. And I thought, I made a mistake here. But this is the first time I've had any kind of confirmation otherwise. But the instructions do say Switch and Android and Windows. So I'm hoping that it does work with Windows. not the end of the world. I'll use it on my Switch otherwise. But instructions, and I don't think this is going to be too difficult. I'm sure it's going to be a case of I've been inside these before to replace the joystick. So there's a number of screws. Take the PCB out and replace it with hopefully whatever's in here. So we've got the promised screwdriver. We have got, what's that? That is the rumble pack replacement. That's a bit smaller, isn't it? So that's the original rumble pack, and it's got a different connector. I've just clicked a button. All right, I've got some buttons on it. There's a switch there, which I assume S is for switch and D is for something else. I don't know. I assume the D is Windows / Android. I'm hoping that's the case anyway. And that will go in there. It won't fit in. I mean, it'll fit in, but it won't actually connect because the socket in there is a bit different at the moment. So I assume on the printed circuit board there is a different connection. Let's hope anyway. Right, so that's the rumble pack with all the buttons for doing various connections. Yeah, they're for connecting to different devices. That's all right. I'm happy now. Right, okay, so this must be the joystick. So here we go. Right, so that is the Hall effect joystick, and that feels all right. Now I have seen other review videos from people in America who weren't too happy with that, but that feels all right because it was always something of a bit of a letdown on the N64 joypad. The joystick itself never felt right. I never got on with it. But that feels all right. I'm pleased by that because I was a bit worried about what it was going to be like. But that seems all right. I'll reserve judgment until it's got electricity coursing through it and I'm playing GoldenEye. But that feels all right. And then I assume this is the circuit board, the printer circuit board. Right, so I should discharge. I used to work at PC World. I should discharge myself, but nothing ever goes wrong with these things. All right, try and get this out without pulling it to pieces. Okie dokie. Right, there you go. That is your printed circuit board. Both sides of it there, and that goes inside that controller. And right, where is the? Well, that's interesting. I'm not actually sure how that connects onto. That must connect onto there somewhere, though. Okay, right. Yeah, I bet. Right, so that sits upright, and that snaps onto there. Right, okay. I think that's how it works. Right, okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take this to pieces and install it. I'll record it while I'm fixing it all up, and we'll see how we get on. So I shall see you shortly. I'll catch you in a moment. Okay then, let's take a look at installing the 8BitDo mod kit for the N64 controller. You get a pretty decent paper instruction brochure. It's in multiple languages. We're going to grab hold of the included magnetised screwdriver and take out the 7 screws that you'll find on the base of the N64 controller. There are also 2 tiny little screws you'll find hidden in the recess for the rumble pack. Once all 9 screws are taken out, then you can look to carefully prise apart your controller. There are 2 main components to it, and always take it apart face down to stop all the buttons falling out. If you've ever taken a game controller apart in the past, you'll know how tricky this can be. Take your time, be delicate, have a good look around the controller and familiarise yourself with it, and if necessary take a few photographs. Now this controller, it's over 25 years old, it's never been opened, so I'm taking this opportunity to give it a good clean down. I've got some degreasing spray and I've given it a good dust inside. Now we're going to start disassembling the items that we're going to be removing. I'm starting by very carefully disconnecting the joystick from the printed circuit board. From here on in, everything gets a little bit fiddly. Now I'm looking at the contact between the joystick and the printed circuit board. It's a little silicone pad that when you depress the button it makes contact with the circuit board. There are 3 that we need to be aware of on the N64 joypad when we're disassembling it here. 1 for the start button and then 1 each for the 2 triggers. Just give it a bit of a blow, clear out any dust that's gathered over the last quarter of a century. Now then, we're going to start taking apart the printed circuit board, and this was quite fiddly, I found. I took my time with this. I kept consulting the instructions because I didn't want to damage anything. That's a tiny little printed circuit board attached by a ribbon cable to the main board. It sits on top of the joystick and is what the little blue silicone pad connects to. Once that's disconnected, you can dispose of the original circuit board. I'm going to keep mine though, just in case I ever want to recommission it. From here, I'm removing the joystick. There are 3 little screws holding it in position, so we'll remove those and then we can now take out the original joystick. We're going to dispose of that. Again, I'm going to hold on to mine. I don't know why, because it's in poor condition. And now I can install the new Hall effect joystick. Now, I did wonder if I did this in the right order, because once I'd installed it, it was quite fiddly to then put the printer circuit board in. It worked alright in the end, but it was quite fiddly, but then this whole entire process seems to be quite fiddly. So we're going to reinsert the 3 screws that was holding in the joystick. That's now securely placed, and then we're going to try and put in the circuit board, and this was probably the most fiddliest bit of the whole lot, trying to get this in. My main concern, and I would really draw your attention to this, it's very easy to snag a cable. Can you see those yellow prongs sticking out from the base of the joypad? Those are where the screws go, and when you bring the base up to the top, they can snag the cable, so you need to pay very close attention to where your cables are running. You may need to move things around, just guide them around the yellow prongs. I actually snagged 2 of the cables. Fortunately, it hasn't damaged them, the joypad still works, but I did snag them, so I really do urge you to be as careful as you possibly can when you're putting this back together. Now, I'm going to keep using the word fiddly, and I've used it about 30 times already, but this is such a fiddly thing to do. You need about 12 pairs of hands, yet there's only room for 1. It's so difficult to put this together correctly. Once you've managed to carefully put the PCB into the recess the original came from, you've then got the 3 smaller PCBs connected by quite a rigid ribbon. You need to manipulate it, but obviously be very careful because you don't want to damage this, otherwise it's game over. So you've got the PCB for the right trigger, the left trigger, and also the joystick, and on then top of those you've got to put the silicone pads back on, which will create the contact with the buttons. Now I'm going to stop here because this is the last moment you can rectify an issue that I found. Once I'd put all the screws back in, I then realised that I'd not put the bung in, the bung that replaces the cable that you no longer need. You need to put that in as you're putting the circuit board into place. At this moment you've still got room to be able to slide it into place, but at any point after this you won't be able to fit it in. The last things you need to put in then are the right and left triggers. Once you've got everything installed, it really is quite a delicate process not to let them all fall out again. They really do all seem to be spring-loaded and ready to throw themselves over your carpet. But there you go, that is the finished internals of our N64 joypad. And that I'm pointing at there, that is the silicone bung that replaces the cable that we no longer need. And we're on the home stretch now. All you need to do is reattach the bottom bit to the top bit, and you've got to be so careful when you're doing this. Check and check again, make sure no cables are getting snagged in between those yellow prongs. I really did take my time with this. I checked and I checked again before I snapped everything back together, and even then it took several attempts for me to actually get a secure fit. Lastly, we've got the 7 external screws to put in, and then the 2 that are inside the recess for the rumble pack. And once you've done that, you can stand back and admire your handiwork. There is your new N64 Bluetooth controller. Go on, give the buttons a good press and the joystick a good waggling. Make sure you're satisfied that everything feels alright at this moment. I can honestly say it feels like a different controller without being encumbered by a cable sticking out the back end of it. Now we can stick in the rumble pack, which is the Bluetooth communication section. I was careful first time round, took a couple of goes for me to securely put it in, and there you go, it's in and ready to go. And now we can go ahead and connect it up to something. Like I say, I'm going to use this on my PC. I'm not bothered with my Switch. The instructions show you what to do. If you do want your Switch, put it into S mode with that button there, or slide it across, put it into D, and that will allow you to connect it up to a computer. You turn on the mod kit by pressing the red start button, and you'll get a little blue indicator light on the rumble pack. From there, navigate to your Bluetooth settings. I'm using Windows 11 here. It immediately detected the N64 mod kit. Click on that, it took a few seconds, and then we were all connected. Literally as quick as that. I've not shortcutted anything there. That's how quick it was to connect. Now we just want to make sure that all the buttons are working as they should be. If you type in controller into your search function, it should take you to the USB controller setup screen. Select the appropriate controller if you've got multiple ones attached to your computer, and then we can go ahead and sort out all the buttons. So there we go, that's the Hall Effect joystick working, that's the D-pad working, the blue and the green buttons, and the 4 right directional buttons. They're actually referred to as the right analog sticks. Those buttons are a little bit confusing, but that's the way they are. Then we've just got the start button and the trigger button, and also the trigger buttons on the right and left shoulders. But it looks like everything is working as it should be. Now then, some of you may want to use this for your retro gaming, and this is RetroArch. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it, and I'm going to help you out here. I'm going to show you how to set up the N64 controller. I've already got 2 controllers associated with RetroArch, the DualShock 4 that I've got in the video at the moment, and also my M30 8BitDo controller. And in port 3, that's where we're going to have the Nintendo controller. So we're going to go down to Device Index, click on the A button there, and then we're going to select the 8BitDo F30 Arcade. That's what it's described as in RetroArch. Now what you use your N64 controller for in RetroArch, well, that's your business. I'm not going to condone anything. but I am going to show you how to set up the controller anyway. So you want to go to the D-pad section, so D-pad up, obviously D-pad up, D-pad down, D-pad left and D-pad right. We are not going to do anything for the A button right, leave that as it is. B button, you want to select the blue button for the B button. X button, do nothing, leave as default. Y button, you're pressing the green button. Select, do nothing, start, press the red start button. Left shoulder is naturally the left shoulder button on the shoulder, and the right button is the right shoulder button on the shoulder. The left 2 button is the trigger button underneath. Then we've got the analog stick itself. So go ahead and stick in the analog up, down, left and right. And then, like I said before, the yellow buttons, they're described as the right analog buttons for some reason. So you want to put in the right analog up, down, left and right, and that's your controller configured. Now that you set up your controller, do remember to save your configuration, and you can do that by just simply restarting RetroArch, and it will save it on exit. So that's it, that's your controller installed and set up for both Windows and for RetroArch. Now it's time to do some gaming. And for this, I decided to raid my Amazon Prime gaming account. I've had this for years and I've never actually downloaded a single game, so I thought I'd go ahead and try it. So I've downloaded a couple of absolute bangers. First up is Metal Slug, the original game. And as you can see, everything I'm inputting on the controller is appearing on the screen. It worked almost perfectly. The start button doesn't work. It doesn't work as the start button on the game for some reason. You have to use the blue button to act as the start button to cycle through things, and therefore it doesn't work in the game itself. To come out of the game, you have to force quit. And speaking of force, this is Force Unleashed 2. Again, it worked almost perfectly, except some of the more complicated controls just don't work. They're not mapped to this controller. This controller is therefore only going to have limited compatibility. Okay then, what are my feelings on the 8BitDo N64 mod kit? Well, I've had it a few days now. It came on Thursday, set it up, and been playing games ever since. It's now Tuesday. I've got to say my feelings are very mixed. I do love the fact that I'm able to recondition an old joypad that might not be in best condition or may not even be working. A couple of those, the couple of DualShocks there, no longer work, and I'm considering updating those. If 8BitDo ever do something for them, they do it for the PlayStation 1, they do it for the SNES, they do it for the NES as well, and they also do it for the Mega Drive control pads as well. And I thought it'd be a great idea to do it for the N64, and if they ever do a DualShock 3 or 4, then I might just go ahead and bring those back to life. I don't like throwing things away, and I think it's a great way of salvaging an old controller that would otherwise be destined for the bin, perhaps. Now, I'm sure that Nintendo's own version, which is available on their website, I say available, is never available on their website. I'm sure that if you could get hold of it, that would be a great alternative. But as a means of salvaging an old controller, this is a great way of doing it. But there are a few caveats to that. Well, first of all, it's a very expensive way to go about getting hold of an N64 joypad. If you could get hold of the Nintendo one for $39.99, that is actually quite good value, because if you're going to go about it this way, you're looking at £32 in the exchange rate to buy the innards, and then you're also going to need a donor controller. If you don't have a donor controller, you'd need to buy one second-hand off eBay, and even one that doesn't work is going to cost you at least £20, maybe £25 plus postage and packaging. So it's an expensive way to get hold of an N64 joypad, and then you've got to factor in your own labour, because it's quite a fiddly process. I use the word so many times in this video, fiddly, because that's what it is. Working on any controller, once you've taken these screws off, it just wants to erupt over the floor. You've got to be very, very careful, very, very diligent when you're taking the screws off, lifting the back cover off of it, making sure that the buttons don't fall off. Always take photographs of things and make sure you remember where they went back into. But it is such a challenging little thing to put everything back into the right place, move things around without pulling on cables, damaging the circuit board. There's so many little things that can go wrong, and like I said in the video, I snagged 2 cables. When I look back and after trying to put the covers back together and realising they weren't going, I lifted them back over. Oh, hello, and I could see that there's a little red cable which was going white from the pressure I was putting on it, so that wasn't far away from splitting. Fortunately, it all works, but you have to be so careful when you're putting everything back together. So you've got to factor in your own labour, factor in a good half an hour. Like I showed in the video, I cleaned this out completely. You perhaps don't need to do that. I was just being a bit anal maybe, but I'm glad that I did do it. But there's a few things to note after that. Notice, well, it's a very squeaky joypad, and I don't remember it being a squeaky. As soon as you start taking things apart and putting them back together, incredibly squeaky. I just don't remember it. But when I look back at the old ones, they're still quite squeaky as well. So maybe it was always the same. I'm not too sure. I hadn't noticed beforehand. But everything works really, really well. The joypad itself, and I mentioned earlier, a lot of people have criticised that, but I found that really, really quite nice. It hasn't got quite such a long throw as the original one, which means it's a little bit more difficult to be precise in your movements. GoldenEye, for example, it doesn't quite work with GoldenEye as it should do. The movement is just too abrupt, and maybe it was a configuration issue, but it just wouldn't quite work with GoldenEye in my books. All the other buttons work really, really well, but using it on PC, let's put aside Switch for a while. On PC, there were compatibility issues. It's set up perfectly fine, but because it's got so few buttons, because these are being set up as basically a right analog stick, they're basically a right analog stick like on the DualShock there. So you're getting rid of those buttons immediately, which means you're reduced in the number of buttons, and the trigger buttons tend to repeat because the whole idea of the design of this is you either hold it like that or like that. Some buttons have dual function, so although it's got lots and lots of buttons, they don't all do different things. So when you're trying to play on a Windows game, you're going to find that you're going to be lacking a few buttons. So it's not ideal. It's really designed for Nintendo games. And if you're playing N64 games on your Switch, they can only be played online. So you've got limited functionality of this, either both on Windows PCs or on your Switch. Not to say it doesn't work really well. If you find a game that only needs the configuration of that, it works really, really well, and I'm very, very happy with it. And I think that joystick is better than that. I never got on with that. It almost feels gritty. I just never liked it. I like that, and the overall feel is so much better because that is so much smaller and lighter. I can't remember what it was. It's in there, isn't it? Right. Look at the size difference on that. And when you're playing, I didn't used to play with the Rumble Pack very much because it's so heavy, that is. But I won't say you don't notice it, but it's a lot less noticeable. What you do notice is the lack of cable. Having that cable on your any controller is always noticeable, but having the umbilical cord cut, so much nicer. It just feels like an entirely different joypad. I do like this joypad so much more than the original joypads. Okay, I've sacrificed this joypad because I can now no longer use it on the N64. I've still kept all the innards, and I would urge you to do the same thing. So if you ever want to do retrofit it back, I could plug it back in. If I ever had four mates around and I wanted to play GoldenEye or I don't know, Perfect Dark or Mario Kart, whatever, a four-player game, then I could do that if I wanted to, but probably won't do now. Everything connected perfectly fine, as you saw in the video. I like the fact that you can switch between literally the Switch and the PC very, very quickly. Everything worked fine, and the battery life, it says 8 hours. I've not played a game for anything like 8 hours. I've played for 4 or 5 hours, never had any issue. I do like the fact that when you plug in the USB-C cable, that glows red until it's charged up. That was quite a nice little touch. I didn't realise it was going to do that. On the video when I was doing the unboxing, I completely missed the fact that there is a USB-C cable, which I have completely lost already, but it does come with a USB-C to USB-A cable, so to charge that up. It was hidden in the box, I just didn't see it. And also I didn't note in the unpacking that little silicone thing is in the plastic case that the PCB was in. To be honest, I thought it was a bit of packaging or something, but no, that's a separate thing. And as I showed on the installation part of the video, it was very easy to miss that. It was literally, I'd installed everything, I screwed everything back together, and I just looked down and what's that? And I had to undo everything to get the space to put it back in again. But for N64 games, it works a treat. Like I say, the joystick doesn't give you the precision on some games, but works better on other games. I've played it on a number of games: Mario Kart, Excite Bike, and GoldenEye, several games, and they generally work pretty well. Excitebike was pretty good. Mario Kart was perfectly fine. It all worked as I'd wanted it to do with an N64 controller, which is just, it's unique, isn't it? Only an N64 controller can give you the same feel on an N64 type game. It doesn't really work perfectly on any other game, if I'm totally honest. You can get it to work, you can have a bit of nostalgia with that, but I wouldn't go out of my way to spend 32 quid and all the labour time just to play a game that wasn't really an N64 game. It wouldn't be worth it. But for what it's meant to do, I think that is pretty damn good. I think it's better. It's better than the original. It really is, in my opinion. The portability of it, the fact the cables aren't hanging down, the fact that that's doesn't weigh half a ton like that one does. It's so much better. The rumble is only compatible on certain games, not all games. So like I said, there is compatibility issues, and you will only discover those as you play in certain games. But I think this is pretty good. Do you want to wait 4 weeks for it to arrive? Well, if you do want it, that's the only way you're going to get hold of it. And £32, including postage and packaging, without any other fees, I thought that was acceptable. And the 8BitDo do lots of others, like I say, and I'm pretty confident I'm going to go ahead and perhaps maybe do the SNES one, go for the really authentic experience on certain games. If you do want to use it on RetroArch, and like I say, I can't condone anything, you might do it on RetroArch, it works perfectly fine. That's all I'm going to say on that. So, do I recommend it? Yes, I do, if you're going to use it for the right things. Would I go out of my way and buy it if I didn't have access to my Switch or games on PC that might make use of it? No, I wouldn't. And remember, and I said it not so long ago, it will not work with the original N64. Your original N64 controller will no longer work with your original N64 as a Bluetooth controller. The N64 cannot support that. 8BitDo do, that's a lot of do's, they do a wireless dongle for various consoles, such as the original PlayStation, the SNES, the NES. They do make dongles that allow their modified and newer Bluetooth controllers to work on a original console. 8BitDo do not currently do one for the N64. Maybe they will address that in the future. It would seem odd that they wouldn't have provided one now when they released the N64 conversion kit, so that would suggest that they're not going to do that. You can buy Bluetooth dongle adapters for N64s from a third party, if 8BitDo aren't already a third party. They're about £20 to £30, so if you are wanting to do a Bluetooth controller on your N64 with this kit, it's another £20 to £30 on top of the £32 for that and the actual controller itself. It's a very expensive, costly thing to do. Overall though, am I happy with my purchase? Yes, I am. I am happy with that purchase. I had plenty of controllers spare, so it wasn't too much of a leap and a jump for me to go for that. I'm happy with it, and it'll do what I want it to do for now. Would I recommend it to everyone? No, I wouldn't. You need to be aware of the cost, the time, the labour to actually do it all, the fact that it could go wrong, you can make a mess of it, and you'll lose all your money and ruin a controller as well. So that needs to be made aware of really quite strongly. So for me, yes, it's a brilliant purchase. For you, maybe not so. But hopefully this video has given you an idea to decide whether that is the product for you. If you've enjoyed the video, do remember to give me a like, comment and subscribe, because it really does help me out, and it's nice to feel the love occasionally. And I shall see you on the next video, so take it easy. See you next time.